Jimmy Kimmel's 22-year career was abruptly ruined. And for the first time, he's crying now. When I initially learned of this suspension, I had to verify it for myself, so I looked it up online and confirmed that the Jimmy Kimmel Show was actually suspended. I spent a few hours researching this case, so don't worry. I'll tell you exactly what the joke was, show you Jimmy's comments that were omitted from the episode, and more. I will now demonstrate this to you. I'll start by disclosing Jimmy Kimmel's specific remarks that led to a company probe. You will also see some proof of the FCC chairman's threat to Disney's broadcasting license. The third thing I'll discuss is how this could ruin all future late-night TV hosts. You will be furious after reading what I've revealed in the previous few minutes, so don't click away. Pay attention, because before we discuss why Kimmel was cancelled, you must know what actually happened to Charlie Kirk. Through his organization Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old conservative, amassed a sizable following among young people. Kirk was not your typical political activist. Kirk was giving a speech at Utah Valley University on January 9, 2025, when Tyler Robinson approached him and shot him to death in front of 3,000 students. The violence was not indiscriminate, rather, it was a deliberate political killing. Investigators discovered that Robinson's bullets bore anti-fascist sentiments, and he confessed on Discord. It gets really insane here, though. Unlike what many people thought, he wasn't some right-wing fanatic. Federal court records reveal that Robinson was influenced by far-left ideology and had a transgender love partner who assisted him with the planning. Kirk was referred to by President Trump as like a son, and flags were ordered to fly at half-staff. Politicians' reactions to this assassination were being watched nationwide. Jimmy Kimmel then made the decision to joke about it. When I initially read the transcript, I got shivers from this. During his Monday night show, Kimmel said, staring straight into the camera,
"Some new lows over the weekend, with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
To be honest, this surprised me. Joking about the way a victim is grieved. That goes against all human decency. Kimmel, however, wasn't finished yet. He persisted in making fun of Trump's emotional reaction as millions of Americans grieved for a young man who stood up for his political convictions.
Kimmel was just fired for talking about Charlie Kirk. So just to kind of give you a timeline of events, after the whole Charlie Kirk situation went down last week, he, on his monologue on his show, several different times condemned the violence and said that there was no place for that in America. He did it right after, he did it the days following, and even the comment that got him fired didn't even directly have anything to do with Charlie Kirk. When I first heard the news, I thought maybe he made a joke that was kind of crass or callous in some way. So I looked up the quote and I'm gonna read it to you. The MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize the kid who unalived Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That's it. That's it. That's all he said. It has nothing to do about Charlie Kirk. It's not celebrating what happened to him. All he did was make a joke about the fact that the Trump administration doesn't really care about him.
This is when the exciting part begins. ABC insiders claim that Kimmel's team was aware of the dangers of this monologue. Despite considering removing the piece, they chose to run it. Everything Kimmel had worked so hard to build over the past 20 years would be destroyed by that choice. Anyone who values free expression will be horrified by what transpired next. Brendan Carr, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, went beyond simply criticizing Kimmel. On a right-wing podcast, Carr referred to Kimmel's remarks as some of the sickest conduct possible. The aspect that should frighten you, though, is that Carr didn't stop at criticism. He threatened to cancel ABC's broadcasting license if they didn't take action against Kimmel, according to federal records. Consider a government official who, because he didn't like a comedian's jokes, threatened to shut down a television network. Carr stated, "You could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at." This is where the wild part starts. According to legal experts, this is the FCC's most assertive use of its authority in decades. In essence, a private enterprise was being blackmailed by the government to fire an employee for political speech. If you find that shocking, you should wait to hear what transpired next. Carr's threats caused the dominoes to start tumbling more quickly than anyone had anticipated. Within a few hours, the 32 ABC affiliate stations owned by Nexstar Media Group declared they would permanently discontinue Jimmy Kimmel Live. It gets worse, though. Disney officials spent the entire Wednesday in emergency meetings, according to insiders. They had to decide whether to endanger their broadcasting license by fighting the government or to sacrifice Jimmy Kimmel in order to save their billion-dollar business. It was a simple decision. ABC announced at 6 p.m. Eastern that Jimmy Kimmel Live will be preempted indefinitely. There was no time wasted in President Trump's celebration. He wrote on Truth Social, "Exciting news for America. The Jimmy Kimmel Show is cancelled due to its poor ratings. If you believe that's the end of it, you're mistaken." After that, Trump attacked Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, accusing them of being two total losers, and demanded that NBC terminate their programs as well. You're going to be amazed by this. The statement "Jimmy Kimmel is not funny" was tweeted by Charlie Kirk years before his own death. Kirk seemed to have foreseen that his own humor would ultimately bring down the comedian he chastised. Chaos ensued in the entertainment sector. In their responses, Michael Keaton, Gene Smart, and Ben Stiller all criticized ABC's choice. Gene Smart wrote, "I'm appalled. I am horrified at the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Free expression, not hate speech, is what Jimmy Kimmel said." When Wanda Sykes arrived to tape the show that evening, she was informed that it had been cancelled. This is the most tragic part, though. Posting a video while wearing heavy makeup, she said, "The Jimmy Kimmel Show has been pulled indefinitely, abruptly because of complaints by the Trump administration. I realized how genuine this is when I watched the video. Guys, not only are famous people losing their jobs, but ordinary people are also suffering because of political pressure." Witnesses report that on Wednesday night, Jimmy Kimmel was observed taking a box of personal belongings out of his studio. According to people close to him, he is inconsolable and is frantically attempting to determine how to save his career. The crowd gathered outside the theater was unaware of what was going on. Tommy Williams, who came from Florida to attend the performance, said to reporters, "They didn't tell us what had happened. They just said that the show was cancelled." The story becomes rather scary at this point, so pay close attention. The government acquiring the authority to regulate what comedians can say on television is the true issue here, not Jimmy Kimmel.
Did you all hear what Jimmy Kimmel said last night on his show? It was absolutely insane. He stood on national television and claimed that the suspected assassin of Charlie Kirk was part of MAGA, and that's just flat out false. Every credible report says the exact opposite. This wasn't a conservative, this wasn't some waving a red hat at a Trump rally person. This was a guy who was radicalized by far-left progressive ideology, trans activism, and dark corners of the internet. And yet, Jimmy Kimmel takes that and tries to smear millions of Americans who had nothing to do with it. That's not comedy, that's political propaganda. And here's the real problem. When the media lies like this, it doesn't just attack MAGA, it erodes trust and it divides the country and it weaponizes tragedy to score cheap political points. So the bottom line here is Jimmy Kimmel owes the public an apology. The media needs to stop with the lies lies, and if we actually care about what is true and basic human decency, then facts, not spin, has to come first. And a lot of people are calling for Jimmy Kimmel to be fired, and Disney may have...
According to some, Kimmel deserves this. They contend that making untrue statements about a victim's history goes beyond humor and into harmful disinformation. To be honest, I can see that point of view. What should frighten you, though, is this. Why shouldn't the government target YouTube channels, TikTok producers, or podcast presenters if it can intimidate TV networks over comedies? Legal experts say this creates a precedent that might go much beyond television. America is the world's wealthiest and most powerful nation. Should the government threaten to prohibit platforms from conducting business in the United States, the majority of corporations will succumb to the pressure. When I initially comprehended the ramifications, I must admit that this gave me shivers. If your favorite TikTok creators, YouTubers, or even podcast presenters say something the government doesn't like, they risk being silenced. This is when things start to get interesting. The political content of late-night comedy has been increasing for years. This year, Stephen Colbert was already cancelled. Kimmel has since left. Next on Trump's agenda are Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. What happens if comedians who are willing to challenge the government are no longer around? How does political satire fare when comedians are too afraid to crack jokes? The whole affair, according to several industry insiders, was staged to address Disney's Jimmy Kimmel issue. Why would the head of the FCC threaten ABC on a random podcast unless someone intended this story to go viral? To be honest, I was taken aback when I first heard this. From a business standpoint, however, it makes perfect sense. Both Disney and the government may attribute the government's decision to fire a critic and save millions of dollars to public outcry. What will happen to Jimmy Kimmel next? Industry insiders say that he is likely done with traditional television. Nobody with government baggage wants to be hired by any network. The problem is that this might not be Kimmel's last moment. This could present an opportunity for independent media enterprises or streaming services like Netflix. Employing Kimmel might be a means of drawing in his devoted following while making a statement about free speech. What this means for all of us, however, is the more important question. Guys, how does the government's ability to ruin a comedian's career over a few jokes speak to American free speech? Let me know in the comments below. Do you believe that Jimmy Kimmel should have been cancelled, or did this go too far? If the government continues to become involved, how do you think comedy will fare? Should comedians have restrictions on their speech, or should everyone have the right to free expression? See you in the upcoming video, where we explore Kimmel's potential replacement and the implications for late-night television.